Hello, I am Draco Amator. In this video, I will share research about creating and improving characters for creative writing. I created this research presentation for my creative writing class, and I do not claim to be an expert. I have referenced multiple writers and their articles about creative writing. I will start with this background image. I love this image. There is the phrase, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." This picture is worth 1,000 stories because there are so many stories that I could come up with using the three main elements of this image. There is the girl standing on the water's edge, the ruined castle, and the worm monster. I could stare at this image for hours and ponder on who this girl is, or the relevance the monster has, or who they are. Is she watching the monster with fascination? Is the monster her friend and they are saying goodbye? Is she frozen in fear as the monster is about to attack the castle? Who knows? So this is my research on characters. Let's get started. So to summarize, in this presentation I will discuss the importance of characters in creative writing, the basics required for characters, coming up with names, describing your character's appearance, how to approach their personality, how you can show your character through dialogue, and how I plan to use this research in my writing and how you can use it in yours. When I talk about characters in writing, I am referring to a full-length fiction novel in which the character can change during the plot. Without characters, there would be no story, no conflict, and no perspective. Take the 1964 film Empire, which has no characters or plot. It consists of a single 8-hour shot of the Empire State Building and nothing else. Director Andy Warhol intended that viewers come up with the narrative, characters, and events. They could also leave the theatre and not miss a thing. You can imagine how boring this film was. So 10 minutes into the runtime, dozens of viewers demanded their money back. J.T. Ellison, writer of All the Pretty Girls, shared some character basics. These include name, visual description, and where they came from, a home. Goals, flaws, and personality is important too. I will talk more about character descriptions soon, but first, let's talk about names. Ellison goes on to say that a name needs to be pronounceable. There is nothing more frustrating than attempting to pronounce a difficult name. The name needs to fit. If your character is a big, tough, serious character, you should probably refrain from calling your character Bob. Another tip that Ellison gives is to make a list of names, so that when you add a side character, you'll have a name ready. Jerry Jenkins, author of Left Behind, reminds us to keep the name within the time era. If your story is medieval, use names and name styles from the medieval era. Make sure it is easily remembered. This is not just in relation to Ellison's pronounceable rule. If all your characters are given common names like Sarah or John, it can get frustrating trying to distinguish the main character from the side characters. You can also search names and their meanings on Google. And C.S. Marks, writer of Elf Hunter, says everyone has a history. Show it in the name if you have families like in Game of Thrones. There are the Starks, Targaryens, Lannisters, and Baratheons. Each family has a motto, such as a Lannister always pays his debts. And a little tip from me, you can use Google Translate. I use it all the time, and it's handy if you are creating characters in a certain country, or you want to have a meaning for a name. Describing the character's appearance is important, but don't over-detail. Leave some to the reader's imagination. Having a character on your cover is handy, like Selena Sidothian from Throne of Glass. In the first story, however, she is only described as having silver hair, turquoise eyes, and is perceived as being attractive by the other characters. When it comes to personality, Marx gives us some traps when it comes to creating characters. A one-dimensional character does not seem real. If your character is happy all the time, and they look at every event as, "Oh no, my friend died, but let's look on the bright side," or "Oh no, the world ended, but it was terrible anyway," you'll end up with a character that is unrealistic and static. Stereotypical characters are uninteresting and cliché. Let's take Lightning from Final Fantasy XIII. Final Fantasy fans criticize her for being too much like Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. When people see a serious soldier who does not want to tell their emotions or backstory, they associate with Cloud. There is also the phrase that lightning comes from clouds. Two perfect characters are an eye roller. They are also known as a Mary Sue. An example of a Mary Sue is Rey from the Star Wars sequels, specifically in Rise of Skywalker. Rey seems to overcome every obstacle without problems because she is too powerful. Every mistake can be undone. A lot of new writers will unintentionally create a Mary Sue because they do not understand that the resolution is what makes a story great. Marx gives us more tips, such as the devil is in the details. You do not need to over-describe your character's personality to the reader. Instead, show it in their actions and dialogue. I'll discuss dialogue later in the presentation. Base characters on real people. I find this to be very handy. My friend group once had a girl who had an attitude and temper. When playing games, she would often get angry when she died, and I thought her reactions were very amusing. Furthermore, she would always have an effective response to anyone criticizing her that would shut them down. She was energetic, funny, and I based the character off of her because it made the character so much more interesting in her delivery, responses, and character arc. And once again, everyone has a history. If your character always sat on a sofa and watched TV their entire life, that's far less interesting than Harry Potter. Harry's parents were killed when he was young, and he almost died himself, but destroyed Voldemort instead because of the protection his mother gave him. Do not neglect your secondary characters. Your characters will do so much better if they have interesting characters to interact with. It will also make those characters more interesting and memorable. Let's take Oaken, the merchant from Frozen 2, who says, "Yoo-hoo, big summer blowout." Oaken is funny, and the characters have an entertaining interaction with him, including Kristoff getting thrown out of the shop for calling him a crook. And devote attention to the villain. As the phrase goes by Luke Taylor, a story is only as strong as its villain. The villain needs to have a goal. I think the best villains are the ones that think they're doing the right thing, as opposed to the generic bad guy. Villains you can agree with are also great. Thanos, from Avengers, has been praised for being a good villain. He believes that by wiping out half the population in the universe, the other half will thrive. Thanos can also be sympathized through his sacrifices. Let's compare that to The Last Jedi, where Palpatine is revived, breaking the tension that anyone who's dead can just come back, so death is irrelevant, but also that the efforts put into stopping Palpatine in the original trilogy is futile. Furthermore, the film starts with Palpatine telling Ben Solo to kill Rey, only to reveal that he later wanted Rey to strike him down so his spirit would pass into hers. What's his goal? Kill Rey, let her kill him? There does not appear to be a goal. In my Year 12 English class, we were required to write a Hunger Games short story spin-off, and I wrote one from the perspective of Haymitch Abernathy, specifically the moment when Katniss is stuck in the tree and he sends her the burn cream. In my story, Haymitch is pondering on how much trouble his ignorance is causing. My teacher pointed out that ignorant people are not aware that they are ignorant due to their ignorance. This is like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people fail to evaluate their own incompetence. A character is not aware of their flaws, and sometimes that very flaw prevents them from seeing or admitting that they have that flaw. Here are a few interesting questions from Jerry Jenkins that you can ask about your character. What keeps them awake at night? What is their blind spot? What are their secrets? What embarrasses them? What passion drives them? You may not answer these questions in your story, but they are good things to know about your character. Now we reach dialogue. Dialogue is useful for showing who your character is through what they say and how they say it. Each character has different ways of speaking, from the country they originate to their level of literacy. To improve dialogue, you can cut to the bone. While some characters might take a long time getting to the point with several ums and an over-detailed description, other characters will be blunt and concise. Cutting to the bone reduces dialogue to its core message. You can reveal characters' backstory and personality through dialogue instead of telling the reader. Two characters can bring up a past event while travelling to a location where that event took place. And be subtle. If your character is sneaky, there will be hints in what they say and how they say it. The way your character avoids details or stays silent for too long can tell you a lot about them. To make sure that you are writing good and clear dialogue, try to read it out loud or have someone read it to you. Nothing shows the realism of dialogue more than hearing it. And you can have a make my day moment, a build up to a phrase that is unique to your character. Like if I say, to infinity and beyond, it is likely you know the character who said that line. And finally, how do I plan to use this research? Well, there are many quotes that have stuck to me. Everyone has a backstory. And don't neglect your side characters. Dialogue is important for showing character, and don't over-explain. I want to improve my side characters, so I have interesting interactions with my main characters, and I want to be able to show my characters better through the dialogue. I also want to consider these questions by Jerry Jenkins. I think they are great for creating a deeper character, even if you do not answer them in your story. And that is my research on characters. I hope you found this video informative. I recommend checking out the articles that I have linked here, and if you want, check out the images. I am Draco Amator. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.